The reading is taken from Matthew chapter 18, starting at verse 21. Then Peter came to Jesus and asked, Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother when he sins against me? Up to 7 times? Jesus answered, I tell you, not 7 times, but 77 times. Therefore, the kingdom of heaven is like a king who wanted to settle accounts with his servants. As he began the settlement, a man who owed him 10,000 talents was brought to him. Since he was not able to pay, the master ordered that he and his wife and his children and all that he had sold to repay the debt. The servant fell on his knees before him. Be patient with me, he begged, and I will pay back everything. The servant's master took pity on him, cancelled the debt, and let him go. But when that servant went out, he found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 denarii. He grabbed him and began to choke him. Pay back what you owe me, he demanded. His fellow servant fell to his knees and begged him, be patient with me, and I will pay you back. But he refused. Instead, he went off and had the man thrown into prison until he could pay the debt. When the other servants saw what had happened, they were greatly distressed and went and told their master everything that had happened. Then the master called the servant in. You wicked servant, he said, I cancel all your debt, that debt of yours, because you begged me to. Shouldn't you have had mercy on your fellow servant, just as I had on you? In anger, his master turned him over to the jailers to be tortured until he should pay back all he owed. This is how my heavenly Father will treat each of you unless you forgive your brother with your heart. This is the word of the Lord.
Last time I got weeping and gnashing of teeth, and this time I get torture. I need to start attending those LLM meetings. Good morning, everybody. My name is Abby, and I will be giving this morning's message. We are blessed here at the Church of the Good Shepherd to have a variety of people who stand here on Sunday mornings and speak about God's Word. A variety of people in age, in experience, people with different interests and passions. And each Sunday, we stand here and give a message based on a Bible passage. As Mark said earlier, we've been recently going through the book of Matthew. And many people will talk about this Bible verse today. Many people will interpret it in many different ways, each pouring a bit of themselves into it, reading it from their own perspective, based on their own past, their own education, their own context. If you've heard me preach before, I hope that you're able to see and feel my passions. I'm not really one to get into the nitty-gritty of theology of the biblical texts or original languages. My passions are in knowing who... Am I okay?
It's microphones, I think. I'll use Alexa microphone.
Hello. My passions lie in knowing who Jesus is and how he is here and now in our lives today. And I see the Bible as a tool to do this. Some people, we risk sometimes seeing the Bible as an icon. The Bible is not God. God is God. And the Bible is a tool given to humankind. So I look at the Bible passage as a platform. How can this passage help me today? How and why was it written at the time? But how is God speaking to me, to us, to our community, to our context? And wow, what a big challenge lies before us this morning as this passage talks to us about forgiveness. Because forgiveness, I feel like it gets a bit more complicated as you get a bit older. Like perhaps as children, it's a bit more black and white. But now it's complicated. So let's see how this parable of the unforgiving servant can help us understand and practice forgiveness today in our own lives. Forgiveness is at the heart of Christianity. In every Sunday morning service, we have confession, where we as a congregation are asked to think about the times in the week where we've let God down. And then the leader of the service says the absolution. Now I know some people who aren't Christians and don't experience a lot of church who find this bit particularly difficult. Well, I don't think I've murdered anyone this week. I haven't stolen anything. I haven't committed adultery. So go ahead and list the 10 Commandments because I haven't done anything of them. So why do I need to be sorry? Because it's not just about murder. Earlier, Mark led us in our confession, and we said the words, through negligence, through weakness, through our own deliberate fault. So if we look at ourselves and how we act during the week, our thoughts, those little movements and gestures and instincts, the stuff we do on purpose or the stuff we do subconsciously, we're not always aware of the pain that we cause others, but we do cause people pain. Sometimes we're aware of it, and sometimes we're not aware of the pain that we're causing ourselves, and sometimes we are aware of it. Sometimes we hold ourselves up to such a high standard of what good is that we're always going to fall short. And that, as we carry that with us, it weighs us down. Does that ring true for anybody? Anybody feeling that? Do you ever feel like you're not good enough? That you make mistakes, or you get snappy with other people, or you don't treat others well, or you don't pray enough, or love God enough, or you get scared or selfish with money, or you ignore a problem because it feels like a lot of effort to fix it? Do you ever get dragged down by this spiral of not enough? This negative drag is what I seek to get rid of in the time of confession. It's a time to remember the things that drag me down about myself and how I treat others. And sometimes it's a time to remember specific things. When I've been snappy in conversations or when I've gotten mad at people. But the confession and absolution is a time to remember these things and ask for God's forgiveness. As Christians, we are blessed to experience and remember and embrace the forgiveness that God offers us. And forgiveness is free. I love free stuff. And it seems like nothing is free these days. Offers of help, of favors are always in exchange for other favors. In this Bible verse, Peter is talking about his brother. How many times must I forgive my brother? And as someone with siblings, I know how much of a bargaining chip forgiveness can be. It's like, Mum says I have to say sorry. Well, I'll forgive you if I get to choose the movie tonight. But God's forgiveness is free. Come before Him. Confess your wrongdoings, the things that weigh you down, the things that make you cringe, the things you wish you hadn't done or hadn't said. Because there is freedom in forgiveness. Find that weight lifted off of you. Find closure. Find peace. I was almost tempted to ask Mark to come up here and do the confession and absolution again, just in case anybody missed it the first time. But I have other things I want to talk about. So if you do want to talk about that, please come and see me or Mark after the service. Let's go back to the Bible reading. One book I read in preparation for this message suggests that you can really see Jesus' sense of humor in this passage. The teaching at the time, the rabbis told people that you only needed to forgive someone 3 times at most, and the 4th time you could do whatever you liked. So when Peter comes to Jesus, he's acting a bit high and mighty. Should I forgive him 7 times? And so you can almost feel Jesus rolling his eyes, and he says, no, 7 times 7. Because in effect, Jesus is saying, it's not a question of how often. How many times should I forgive my brother? That's not the question. There's a deeper matter beneath it all. The real question is, why should I forgive at all? When you see that you should forgive, then you will see, Peter, that there's no limit at all. That forgiveness is the kind of thing that should be given away without limit. And he only chooses the figure of 7 times 70. Anybody want to tell me what that is? 490. He only chooses this number to play upon what Peter said to him because it really suggests unlimited forgiveness. Deep breath. Who here would find it easy to offer unlimited forgiveness? I feel like it's impossible. I was listening to a sermon about this Bible passage where a pastor was saying that we can really divide wrongs done to us and the forgiveness we can offer into two different parts. And the first part is passive forgiveness, the forgiveness that we can offer easily. And in offering easy forgiveness, it makes our daily lives and our relationships easier. The second type I'll talk about later, but passive forgiveness is, I forgive you for forgetting to unload the dishwasher. I forgive you for snapping at me when you were tired. I forgive you for being late for a meeting. And I think this is what we should aim for when it comes to the 490 or unlimited times of forgiveness. Because it's beneficial to our relationships and to our hearts to let these things go. And sometimes it's tempting to hold on, especially when we're hurt or we get bitter, especially when it feels kind of satisfying to hold on to something over someone, and especially when the person you need to forgive isn't asking for forgiveness. Let's look at the parable. A king is settling his debts when he comes across a man who owes him an extraordinary amount of money, the amount of money that can't be paid back. And upon his servant begging for forgiveness and mercy and leniency, the king forgives the man's huge debt and lets him go completely free and clear. But this man was not grateful. Rather, living in peace with others, he found a friend who owed him just a little bit and did not demonstrate mercy. He seeks and he demands repayment. And when this second servant also begs for mercy, he does not forgive, but rather throws him in prison. And when the king hears of this, he confronts his forgiven servant, and reminds him of the mercy he was shown, and then sends him away to be tortured and punished. A man named Ray Stedman says, forgiveness, of course, is the virtue we most enjoy and least employ in our Christian experience. We all love to be forgiven, we expect it and want it, but we find it a struggle to forgive. We resist it and refuse oftentimes to do it. But we have a merciful God, a God who's bigger than our want to be bitter and our want to hold things over people. We can forgive because he has forgiven us. I love Jesus. I just love him because if everyone followed this way of living, if we let the little things go in memory of God's mercy and forgiveness for our big things, life on earth would be so much better. When it's tempting to hold on, when we hurt, when we feel it's satisfying to hold a grudge, and when the person you need to forgive is not seeking forgiveness, let us all think of the mercy and forgiveness that comes from God through us and extended to others. Forgive if you can forgive. But I said earlier, there are two types of forgiveness. Passive forgiveness and other forgiveness. Earlier I said that my passions were really bringing Jesus into the here and now for people and talking about verses and parables like this to apply to modern day. So I was excited to preach this morning about forgiveness and the beautiful difference it can make practically in your life today. Both God's forgiveness for you and the forgiveness you can give to others. But I am aware that there are some really, really awful things that happen to people. There are some really evil things that happen to people. And I cannot be the one who stands up here blindly telling you to forgive someone. I can't tell you to forgive your abuser. There are things and people in this world that feel, look, and seem unforgivable. And I have no advice or wisdom when it comes to that. The preamble to this parable, the conversation between Jesus and Peter, is light-hearted, but the parable itself has terrible consequences for the one who does not forgive. And it's something that turns people off from the good news of forgiveness. Following Jesus might give me a freedom and lightness from the guilt I feel, but if I have to forgive the ones who have abused me, I don't want anything to do with that. And with my human eyes and my heart that longs for justice, I completely understand. Why should the person who has done evil deserve my forgiveness? I'd like to read you a passage written by Nadia Bolz-Weber. She's a Lutheran pastor in the States who works with many broken people and has a lot more insight into the darker side of humanity than I do. And I found these wisdom in these words, and I'd like to share them with you. It's a long quote. She says, "I really believe that when someone else hurts us, we are connected to that mistreatment like a chain. Maybe retaliation or holding on to anger about the harm done to me doesn't actually combat evil. Maybe it feeds it. Because in the end, if we're not careful, we can actually absorb the worst of our enemy, and on some level even start to become them. So what if forgiveness, instead of being a pansy way of saying it's okay, is actually a way of wielding bolt cutters and snapping the chain that links us? Like saying, what you did was so not okay that I refuse to be connected to it anymore. Forgiveness is about being a freedom fighter. And free people aren't controlled by the past. Free people are not easily offended. Free people are unafraid to speak the truth to stupid. Free people are not chained to resentments, and that's worth fighting for. There really is a light that shines in the darkness, and the darkness will not overcome it. So I don't know about you, but I want that freedom. I want that light, I want that love, I want that mercy, and I want that grace and laughter more than I want revenge. So we need to seek out forgiveness. Forgiveness from God for ourselves. And in experiencing our own forgiveness, forgive others. Forgive when you can. And when it's really hard, ask God for help. Seeking God's forgiveness. In seeking God's forgiveness, you will find freedom. And that's how I'd like to wrap up today's message. Seek God's forgiveness because you will find freedom. And when it comes to forgiving others, forgive what you can, when you can. And when it's really hard, ask God for help.